Hello, and welcome to the Classical Guitar Heroines podcast.
Join us as we celebrate the remarkable contributions of women in this timeless art form, featuring insightful interviews, captivating stories, and performances that showcase their talent and dedication.
I'm your host, Bridget Gerard, classical guitarist and member of the Kitchener-Waterloo Guitar Orchestra.
And I'm your host, Mariette Stevenson, founder, music director, and conductor of the Kitchener-Waterloo Guitar Orchestra and professor of guitar at Wilfrid Laurier University and the University of Waterloo.
We are excited to bring you the lives and music of these classical guitar heroines, past and present, to share with you their enduring impact on music and our world.
Welcome to the first episode of the Classical Guitar Heroines podcast. Let's introduce ourselves to our listeners. Bridget, when did you become interested in classical guitar?
Well, I started playing music when I was 7 or 8. My first instrument was the accordion, which I stopped playing when I broke my arm. I will admit I was not a fan of the accordion. It was not the instrument I wanted to play. I don't want to upset anybody. I don't want to have any emails coming to me. The accordion's a beautiful instrument, just not my instrument. So then in high school, I started playing the clarinet. In my 20s, I dabbled with the tin whistle and playing some Celtic music. And at 42, in a yoga class, I heard the Boccherini Guitar Quartet playing Christmas music, and I decided I wanted to learn to play the guitar. 2 years later, in September 2017, I started playing with the Kitchener-Waterloo Guitar Orchestra.
That is awesome. And can you explain to our listeners where the idea for this podcast came from?
As you know, Mariette, recently I started listening to podcasts, and I wanted to hear a podcast that focuses on women that play classical guitar. I wanted to know more about what was going on in my community.
Mm.
I could not find one anywhere, and we talked about it. And then I suggested that we do this podcast together. This would have been on a Thursday night during my regular guitar lesson. And by Monday morning, you had emailed me to say that you were in and that we should do it. I sent you a big long list of all the things I'd been thinking about, and that got the whole thing rolling. I see this podcast as a way to shine a light on the ladies of classical guitar, past and present. So, Mariette, what's your musical background?
Well, Bridget, I'm a Canadian classical guitarist who's performed in numerous recitals, both as a soloist and as a chamber musician. And my musical collaborations include the Eclipsis Guitar Trio and Duo Calixa. I am the music director for the Kitchener-Waterloo Guitar Orchestra, which is an amateur community guitar ensemble that performs outreach concerts locally. And I'm also a music arranger with publications available at Strings by Mail, Sheet Music Plus, and the Austin Guitar Curriculum. I teach guitar at Wilfrid Laurier University, the University of Waterloo, and also for private music studios. And I'm a published researcher on the contributions of women to guitar orchestras. And just a side note, my solo and duo Calixa recordings are available on Bandcamp and all streaming platforms.
You have these amazing musical credentials. Why did you want to do this podcast with me?
Well, I decided to come on board with this podcast because one, it is a fantastic idea. And two, women are, as I agree, women are underrepresented in both classical guitar and classical music in general. And I've worked for many years researching women's contributions to classical guitar, as I said. And I have also commissioned and performed music by women composers. But at the end of the day, that is all just a drop in the bucket. And I think and hope that this podcast will provide a new platform for exploring women's awesome contributions to classical guitar, whether as performers or composers, teachers, concert organizers, luthiers. The list goes on. And with that, let's address the lack of representation of women in music. So, in Donne's Women in Music's report, which is titled Equality and Diversity in Global Repertoire 2021 to 2022, only 7.7% of orchestral works that were performed were written by women. So that's less than 10%. And of which
That's
5.5% were by white women, less than 0.1% of performed orchestral works are composed by non-binary composers, and only 1% was composed by Black women composers. 87.7% were composed by white men. 76.4% were composed by dead white male composers. And 27.5% of all the pieces performed globally were written by 10 composers. All were white, historical European men. Their music has been performed nearly 4 times more than all the pieces by women combined.
that is bonkers.
I agree, it is. And in the same report, Donne looked at people credited as music by or composer on official credits for the top 100 grossing movies of 2021. Only 5.7%, given that accreditation, are women.
And according to Donne's Women Musicians Insight Report, released earlier this year in 2024, based on over 2,500 responses, the report highlights the persistence of gender disparities within the UK music industry and shows that there is much work to be done to create a more equitable landscape for women in music. Findings include 51% of women in music have been discriminated against due to their gender. 1/3 of women in music have been sexually harassed. Female musicians are paid less and have shorter careers, despite on average being more educated and trained than their male counterparts. In the same report, Donne found that 89.9% of chief conductors for orchestras are men, with only 10.1% being women. Continuing in that report, Donne looked at equality and diversity in the studio. In pop music, they analyzed the end-of-year singles chart top 100 in 2021, published by the UK official charts, and found there were more women as performers and songwriters than in the past. However, out of 185 featured artists in the UK singles chart in 2021, only 29.2 were women, 8.7 were BIPOC women, and for songwriters that year, 19.6 were women and 6.97 were BIPOC women.
And lastly, when looking at music production, the numbers are consistently low, with only 5.02% of women being credited as producers, and only 1.67% of those were BIPOC women. If you would like to find out more information on this invaluable report, please check out Donne, that's spelled Donne, Women in Music, at their website and on Instagram. So we will change gears now to a more uplifting note, and let's let everybody know about upcoming episodes on the Classical Guitar Heroines podcast.
Wonderful. In episode number 2, we are going to chat with Canadian guitarist Emma Rush. Emma Rush is widely regarded as one of Canada's premier classical guitarists, and her career has commanded world recognition. She has performed numerous festivals, including the Shanghai International Festival in China, Festival de Guitarras Lagos de Moreno in Mexico, Future Echoes Festival in Sweden, and the Iserlohn Guitar Festival in Germany. Emma Rush is passionate about bringing classical music to unusual spaces and bringing unusual music to classical spaces. She regularly tours rural, remote, and other communities where live music experiences are rare. Her concerts are intimate and engaging and feature rarely heard historical works, little-known gems of Latin American guitar repertoire, folk music from around the world, and always music by female composers. From Wake the Sigh, her recording released in 2021, here is Emma performing Polka Number 1 by Susan Dommett.
That was Emma Rush performing Polka Number 1 by Susan Dommett from Wake the Sigh. You are listening to the Classical Guitar Heroines podcast.
So, in our third episode this season, we are going to be talking to the highly engaging Karen Agro, who is on a mission to help individuals and corporate teams who feel stressed and burned out shift their mood in under 10 minutes with music. At age 18, after years of classical guitar study, Karen was at a crossroads. Would she go to school for music or for pharmacy? She chose pharmacy, but vowed to return to her musical craft, but not before spending over 30 years gaining her Doctor of Pharmacy and her Masters of Science, building an accomplished career in both pharmacy and the pharmaceutical industries, and speaking on stages across Canada. Then, in 2018, she fell 15 feet off a rock climbing wall. Faced with the threat of never playing guitar again, Karen had her wake-up call, determined to make both health and music a part of her life. A few years later, when her father was in the end stages of dementia, she realized the potency of music. Karen watched her mostly unresponsive father utter the name of the pieces she was playing. Music tapped into a part of his brain that was still very much alive. To this day, Karen shares her passion about creating shifts through the power of music. Let's listen to Karen from Toronto's Speaker Slam sharing her thoughts on the importance of music in our lives and how she came to love classical guitar.
Music is an emotional language that transports us to those moments of meaning, to uncover the emotional and physical experiences of the past so we can take the learning and bring it into our present day and even into our future. Now, music can also bring us to moments we didn't know we needed to remember. My parents wanted me to love classical music. So as any good teenager does, I made sure they knew I hated it. Long before the internet and Spotify, a 45 vinyl, little disc with a big hole in the center, arrived from my uncle in England. I was intrigued, but by this point, I was done playing music I would never learn to like. But there I was, secretly, in my room, listening to those opening notes of Cavatina. And to my shock, I discovered I could love classical music. It was this piece that helped me see myself differently, that I could be both a musician and a scientist. I didn't have to choose. And music can shortcut us to spots in our life that we didn't even know we needed to remember. Fast forward 20 years, and I'm standing in my empty family home, realizing that my 18 summers were done. My kids were off to live their lives, and I didn't realize that my role in their lives had a 18-year shelf life. And there comes a point when it all stops. And there I was in my empty home listening to this song. Joni Mitchell's Both Sides Now reminded me that I had less time ahead of me than behind me, that the finiteness of life meant that I had to be in the present moment, choose who I was, and live life intentionally. Music brings with it a set of visceral emotions that reveals truths about ourselves that we sometimes only see in hindsight. And music can shortcut us to the past so we can take away new learnings for our life now.
That was Karen Agro from the Toronto Speaker Slam, and she will be our featured guest in episode 3. In our 4th episode, we will talk with the accomplished guitarist, composer, and musicologist, Dr. Candice Mowbray, about Spanish guitar virtuoso and Francisco Tarago pupil, Josefina Robledo. Appearing as a soloist, collaborative musician, and guest lecturer, guitarist Candice Mowbray has been featured artist at festivals and concert series throughout North America. She achieved the Doctorate of Musical Arts in Classical Guitar Performance from Shenandoah Conservatory in Virginia. She has held teaching positions with Shepherd University in West Virginia, Shenandoah Conservatory, Hagerstown, and Frederick Community Colleges, as well as numerous schools of music in the Mid-Atlantic region. She also works with the nonprofit organization Marlowe Guitar International. She's a highly regarded guest lecturer and author of numerous articles on women and classical guitar, and notably played a key role in providing research and liner notes for Berta Rojas' 2022 recording Legado, which won 2 Latin Grammy Awards. From her CD Reverie, here is Candice Mowbray performing her arrangement of Gymnopédie No. 1 by Eric Satie.
That was Candice Mowbray performing her beautiful arrangement of Gymnopédie No. 1 by Eric Satie from her recording Reverie.
In episode 5, we will take a look at the women that have made a lasting impact at the Guitar Foundation of America's International Concert Artist Competition in recent years.
Here is the Classical Guitar Heroines podcast news roundup for the summer of 2024. Donné's Women in Music broke a Guinness Book of World Record in a 24-hour live concert of music by women and non-binary composers in London, England. Classical guitarists who performed included Eleanor Kelly.
Jelika Majinovic received a Toronto Arts Council grant and the Canada Graduate Scholarship offered to the top-ranked Social Sciences and Humanities Research Council of Canada doctoral applicants. She is the first guitarist from the University of Toronto to win this scholarship.
Olga Emelkina Vera won first place in the Adult Composition Division of the Music International Grand Prix, with guitarist Bokyeon Byung performing the winning work entitled In the Golden Gleam.
And Frédéric Gagnon was listed on the CBC's 30 Under 30 Canadian Classical Musicians for 2024.
At the Koblenz Guitar Festival competition, Gwyneth Agler won the Joaquin Rodrigo Prize for the Best Interpretation of a Piece by Joaquin Rodrigo and took third place in the overall competition. Hao Yang from China won first place.
In the Guitar Foundation of America International Concert Artist Competition, Hao Yang from China won second place, and Leonila Alejandro from Puerto Rico won first place. And here's another reminder that the Classical Guitar Heroines podcast's 5th episode is dedicated to the women who have won the GFA competition.
There were 5 finalists at the 13th Martinez Guitar Competition, with Emma Kapoor from Serbia taking second place and Bianca Salate from Poland finishing in 5th place.
There were 3 prize winners at the Guitar Fest West competition in August, including Audrey Owen, who placed 3rd, and Gwyneth Aguilar, who took 1st place. And special acknowledgement goes to Ethan Sun, who won the award for Outstanding Performance of a Piece by a Woman Composer.
Susie Auclair received the Honorable Mention Award at the International Classical Guitar Composition Competition in Barcelona, Spain, for the 2nd and 3rd movements of her piece, Suite No. 2 in B minor. In memoriam, the classical guitar world lost 2 important performers in the fall of 2023, Lily Ashfar and Heike Matthiesen. Lily Ashfar passed away on October 24th last year. She was born in Iran in 1960, moved to the United States to study the guitar in 1977. She attended the Boston Conservatory of Music, where she received a bachelor's and a master's degree in guitar. In 1989, she received a doctorate from the Florida State University with a thesis on 24 Capriccios de Goya by Mario Castelnuovo Tedesco. She was the first woman in the world to achieve a doctorate in classical guitar. As a performer and teacher, she won many awards, including Orville H. Gibson Award for the Best Female Classical Guitarist, as well as 3 annual Premier Guitarists Awards by the Memphis chapter of the National Academy of Recording Arts and Sciences, 2 Distinguished Teaching Awards in 1996 and in 2000, and the Eminent Faculty Award in 2000 at the University of Memphis. Lily Ashfar died of cancer in Iran, October 24th, 2023, at the age of 63. Here is Lily performing Asturias by Itzhak Albanese and Yan E. Mariam, a traditional Iranian harvest song arranged by Lily Ashfar.
That was the amazing Lily Afshar performing Asturias by Itzhak Albanoth and Jan y Mariam, arranged by Lily Afshar. You are listening to the Classical Guitar Heroines podcast. Heike Matthiesen was a German classical guitarist who appeared internationally as a soloist and with ensembles. She promoted music by women composers, and her last two albums, Guitar Ladies and Guitar Divas, featured works by women. Heike was born in Braunschweig, Germany, into a family of classical musicians. Her father was a choral conductor, and her mother was a pianist. Although she had an extensive music education as a young person, she took her first guitar lessons at the age of 18, and after 1 year, she studied with Heinz Toart at the Musikhochschule Frankfurt. Pepe Romero, who taught her for several years, was also a formative influence on her playing. Heike performed in many countries, including the US, Russia, Asia, Europe, the Middle East, and Africa, and was a juror for national and international guitar competitions. She was a board member of the Internationale Arbeitskreis Frau und Musik and curated the guitar repertoire for the Archiv Frau und Musik. In August 2019, she was diagnosed with malignant melanoma on her neck. She died of cancer on December 22, 2023, at the age of 59. Here's Heike performing Madame Sidney Pratton's Carnival of Venice.
You are listening to the Classical Guitar Heroines podcast, and that was Heike Matthiesen performing Madame Sidney Pratten's Carnival of Venice.
We want to thank all of our wonderful guests who will be featured on upcoming episodes, and to everyone who graciously allowed us to use their music. We could not have made this podcast without your support. You can follow Classical Guitar Heroines podcast on Facebook and on Instagram for news on future episodes, and click the like button wherever you are listening to this podcast.
And remember, if you are a woman who plays classical guitar, you too are a classical guitar heroine. Thank you for joining us on the Classical Guitar Heroines podcast.